Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Find a living in fisheries. The UAS Fisheries Technology Program offers online study from anywhere in Alaska, plus labs and workshops in many Alaska towns.
Is most likely a chum.
Find your living without leaving where you are. Fisheries Technology from UAS.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. On the satellite imagery, pretty good storm here with the front moving northward. Back edge stands out quite vividly here, swinging up, just now making landfall on Kodiak Island, or at least at 4 p.m. this afternoon, and extending eastward and then down to the southeast, still well off the panhandle. Moving northward this afternoon, so storm warnings coming into the picture here. Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, back across the North Gulf Coast, and then we're going to see some gales along the panhandle. Up in the interior, mid and high level clouds streaming northward toward the Alaska Range throughout the day today. Starting out pretty good to start with, and then general solid overcast now just about all across southern Alaska, right out into the Bering Sea. Looked like some pretty good clearing up in the central interior, Tanana Valley there, the Fairbanks area, back up in toward Kotzebue and the Noatak Valley, and then the north side of the Brooks Range. Some clouds right through here. Otherwise, north of there, some clearing and colder temperatures, cold air coming southward, but really not strongly pushing southward. So have northerly winds out in this area, but Perblof's 15 to 25 miles an hour, and that's about it. And that extends on down across the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. And the front here, spreading moisture. Rain, Kodiak becomes mixed here across the Aleutian Range, and then northeast winds coming down slope, actually warming the temperatures up here over northeast Bristol Bay, getting a mixture of rain and snow moving into that area. Kind of a sharp line here, and then it's back into the snow as you get into the colder air and the northerly winds. Otherwise, out to the west, not much going on at all. Weak high pressure, variable clouds, isolated snow showers, mostly back to the northwest of the Perblofs. Could be one or two around Adak and Atka, and then off to the northwest of Shemya. And rolling this again, pretty good jog to the north here over the last 24 hours, but this system beginning to slow down. And this evening will continue to gradually move northward, but then by later or after midnight, actually the precipitation pattern will start to pull back away from the coastline. But otherwise, for today, that is the location of the front about 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, just recently, again, coming right onto the east side of Kodiak Island. And again, gale and storm force winds with that, extending back to the west, gradually moving northward, precipitation coming north as well. Nice in the interior, weak trough, flurries with this area clouds up through here, possibly back into the Yukon Delta. Low stuff in the Bering Strait, extending down to St. Lawrence Island. Low clouds, patchy fog, a few flurries showing up there in the observations. Otherwise, just basically low clouds here with little, if any, precipitation to the Perblofs, and it breaks up right along the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. And for tonight, that front may make it up as far north as where I have it drawn here, which is just about to the Kenai Peninsula, edging in toward the Panhandle. So gales definitely developing there tonight in the forecast, with rain just getting along the coastal areas, really having trouble pushing much farther east than that, but definitely solid rain from Yakutat across the North Gulf Coast in toward mainly western Prince William Sound, and then down the Kenai Peninsula to Kodiak Island, with again storm warnings out tonight, Shelikof Strait, Barren Islands, eastward along the North Gulf Coast. And then up to the north, drier, less wind, A little breezy here back over the western interior, and a little gustier on the winds now. Northeasterlies kicking up maybe 35 miles an hour here across the southwest, with areas of snow extending from Kuskokwim Bay and Togiak, Dillingham, and that area, actually just barely into Kuskokwim Bay, about Cape Newenham onto the east, maybe to Dillingham, southward into the Alaska Peninsula, breaking out the showers from Cold Bay westward. Scattered showers, breezy but not too bad on the winds for the Fox Islands. A lot less wind and just isolated snow showers out to the west. Very weak trough out there, and that's about it. Up north, north slope, variable clouds and easterly winds, gustiest on the east side of the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, less wind to the west. Not much change here over the interior. Mild with variable clouds, maybe a few snow showers possible around the Koyukuk Valley area, somewhere between Bettles and say Fort Yukon, but nothing very significant at all. And otherwise, most of this precipitation won't make it past the coast range here. What it does will probably be mixed in nature and mainly along the Talkeetnas, which would probably put it high enough to be in the form of snow. Otherwise, not much in the way of anything getting too far north. And then we'll see for tomorrow, actually a low pressure area down here coming onto the map. That's going to move northeastward toward the Panhandle tomorrow. And that's going to act to actually pull the precipitation area back to the southwest and reorient that front. Probably right through here, we'll see a weakening frontal boundary, which will be pulled back from the position it was. So right along the coast, rain tending to diminish during the afternoon hours as this system cranks up and pushes up to the northeast. So we've got 45 or 50 knot winds coming back in toward the southern southeast coast tomorrow afternoon. Dixon entrance all across the southern areas there, increasing wind, rain heavy at times, less of that as you go north, just a chance of rain for Juneau and drier on up to the north, but easterly flow keeping Kodiak Island, periods of rain but less wind, and the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range could see some rain at the lower elevations, of course snow higher up, but that's not going to be very significant, and I would look for anything to get into the Cook Inlet area, especially from Anchor Point northward to Anchorage into the Madanuska-Susitna Valley, looking pretty dry tomorrow, and the same up over the Tanana Valley, variable clouds and some sunshine there with no precipitation. That'll extend back to the northwest coast. Maybe a few flurries showing up along the eastern Arctic coast there with those gusty east winds, and then we have a swath of snow here. Really light, kind of showery or flurries from the Seward Peninsula, a little more enhanced here along the southwest coast, along this boundary of the colder air to the west, milder conditions to the east, and that's kind of overrunning it, so I end up with an area of light snow right through here. So funnel right on down to the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Mixed precipitation, northeastern Bristol Bay, King Salmon, probably warm enough for rain, Igigik on down to maybe Chignik, and then colder temperatures, but a little gusty on those northwest winds coming out of the bays and passes there along the south side of the peninsula. No change out in the Bering Sea, variable clouds, light winds, isolated snow showers. And then for the outlook for Wednesday, not much change out here, maybe a few more snow showers a little farther to the east, but still not quite to the Pribilofs, maybe a chance of a snow shower for Alaska. Cold air continues to come southward, but speed's not all that great. Maybe 20 knots there for St. Lawrence Island, 15 to 20 at the Pribilofs, on down to the eastern Aleutians. Looks like maybe gale force winds here across the Alaska Peninsula out of the northwest, and areas of snow likely for Bristol Bay. Back up along the up along the coastal areas there, Kilbrook Mountains, but probably not making it to Bethel. And a trough again, snow showers moving into the Adak and Atka area, and a storm just finally coming onto the map there late in the day, but only pushing over to the Komodorsky Islands. Otherwise, this front weakening and swinging in slowly. So that's going to keep occasional rain going across the Panhandle during the day on Wednesday with a lot less wind. It could start out pretty windy there as this rolls on up initially. You'll see the stronger winds, possibly storm force to start the day out with here all along the coast. And then that'll weaken in the afternoon, especially over the southern areas, probably dropping down to gale force or less. Otherwise, strong easterly winds along the North Gulf Coast with rain as this next front pushes northward. And it looks like some moisture may get a little farther to the north with this across areas of the Copper River Basin up to about the Alaska Range and then cutting off. I wouldn't look for anything at all in the Tanana Valley. This up here, just some flurries that may or may not show up. Bulk of the moisture will be over here in Canada, but that easterly flow may drag some of that moisture westward, but it won't really amount to very much. Otherwise, nothing in the forecast precipitation-wise over just about all of northern and central Alaska. Back down into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, that shower symbol there was left over. Shouldn't be there. Dry to the west here. Even out over the Bering Sea, maybe some areas of flurries, low clouds, possible marginal IFR associated with that, but not bad here down across the Pribilofs. And then most of this stuff slowly moving eastward, but not all that significant. For temperatures this afternoon for the Panhandle, shaping up mostly in the lower to mid 40s, some areas reaching 50 over at Stewart, otherwise 46 Sitka, 43 at Elfin Cove, Skagway up to 45, and a 41-degree reading at Yakutat. Both Cordova and Valdez right around 40 degrees, as was Gulkana. Lower 40s there across the Tanana Valley, the exception being Fairbanks up to 45. Same temperature recorded there at Talkeetna. Upper 30s here, Kenai across to Anchorage, Palmer, and Seward. Homer did make it to 40, as did AKwx. Generally about 40 degrees here at Kodiak Island, right up across the Kenai Peninsula. And then farther north, above freezing there, Bettles 35 above, 30 degrees at Fort Yukon, and then Anatuvik at 25. Arctic coast holding a little above or below zero there this afternoon. Coldest readings on the west side, Wainwright and Atasuk a little below. Up into the lower 20s there at Kotzebue with Kivalina at 13, 33 Ambler. Big warm up here near 40 degrees. They're at over the northwest interior, 28 in Nome, but just 4 at Tin City, 21 Gamble. Upper 20s to lower 30s here along the southwest coast, and then warming from 28 there at Bethel. Up the river valleys to 43 at McGrath, and heading out into the Bering Sea. Lower to mid 20s here for the Pribilofs, cloudy skies, 33 in Alaska, near 40 Adak, Atka, and Shimya. And upper 20s there at Cold Bay, and then milder conditions again spreading in across the Aleutian Range there, pushing into the upper 30s here for king salmon. Iliamna up to 40 as well. Lows for tonight, lower 30s here from those areas down across the Alaska Peninsula. Maybe some upper 20s, especially Cold Bay westward out to Unalaska, near 20 for the Pribilofs, 12 for Savunga. And below zero now, just along the Arctic coast, locally over the North Slope, with teens from the Brooks Range into this north central interior. Teens in lower 20s for the Tanana Valley, and a little chillier, but staying above zero here over the extreme eastern interior, Eagle on down to Tok and Northway. 30s for the southeast coast. Highs tomorrow about the same here for the Panhandle, mid to upper 40s to maybe lower 50s in that area, and 40s North Gulf Coast, upper 40s in the Susitna Valley, with mid 40s for the Copper River Basin, and 40s to near 50 up over the Tanana Valley. And it looks like Bettles pushing up to 41 in the forecast. And then looks like some milder conditions even getting north of the Brooks Range there, but the Arctic coast, everyone should rise above zero, maybe in the 5 to 15 degree range, upper 20s in the northwest, lower 30s, or upper 30s to lower 40s here over the southwest interior, and 30s elsewhere. Flying weather tomorrow, swath of IFR here along the southwest coast, Nunivak Island, right on down to the Alaska Peninsula here on the Bering Sea side with those northwest winds. IFR Kodiak Island tonight through tomorrow morning, and also along the North Gulf Coast. Marginal VFR gradually just barely reaching the coastline there by 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. IFR along the Arctic coast. Tomorrow afternoon, these things start to improve here, especially in the north, but the next system coming up will begin to lower those conditions later in the afternoon, so going a little more marginal down here to the south. IFR stuck up along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, and the upslope areas of the western Alaska Range, some IFR, and also from the Alaska Peninsula northward along the coast to Wales. Otherwise, back to the west, looking really good. A lot of VFR showing up here for the Bering Sea. Anatuvik and Adigan will both be VFR for the passes tomorrow, wide open on both. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasionally marginal, especially on the eastern entrance. Probably be VFR on the west side the entire day, and that forecast for rainy as well. VFR west entrance, marginal on the east. And for windy, VFR either approach. Same forecast for Isabel and Mentasta. All three passes will be VFR. And Tanita as well, VFR, with Portage, IFR, again, lowest conditions, eastern approach. And for Chilkoot and White, It looks like possibly starting out marginal, but then becoming VFR, especially as that next system approaches down to the south, tend to raise the ceilings, visibilities up to the north. So that's kind of the trend of the forecast. So looks pretty good for the passes tomorrow. And then for the freezing levels, southeast flow here, those storms rolling up to the northeast southerly flow. So 2,000 feet coming up north of Sitka there, almost to Elfin Cove, and 4,000 feet into Dixon Entrance at the surface along or into Cook Inlet a little bit. Again, this late tonight, early tomorrow morning, then back down along the peninsula, and then milder air, a little bit milder air coming into the southwest Bering Sea. Icing along the Kodiak Island area, Alaska Peninsula, and then this moving northward in the afternoon to the Panhandle, and that southerly wind here, jet stream 140 knot wind pushing that next system up into the area, and then a branch heading southeast at about 70 across Kodiak Island. 9,000 foot winds, really strong, 50 to 70 knots off the southeast coast tomorrow, especially ahead of this system. That's where they'll be the strongest. Very brisk winds, even up in the interior, up to 30 knots, north to northwest, 25 to 30 out to the west. Same pattern, 3,000 feet, 40 to 60 knots, call it here, along and off the southeast coast. Up to 30, 10 to 30 knots over the interior, northerlies 10 to 20 to 25 knots across the Alaska Peninsula. Turbulence, occasional moderate chop here in the turquoise area, which is all of southern Alaska, back to the eastern Aleutians and along and just off the southeast coast. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecast and the ice edge.
Good afternoon. My name is Rocky Capozzi, and on behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. This is the third segment with our guest Gary Bennett, and we're talking about ADS-B and some of the pros and cons of the various options. And a quick summary, there is an FAA mandate for ADS-B out by 1 January 2020. It turns out that quite a bit of information can come into your cockpit, but you have to have ADS-B in to get that. And there are two systems that are available to comply with the mandate for ADS-B out. One is a 1090 ES, which refers to a frequency of operation, and the other is a 978 UAT, or Universal Access Transceiver. And the UAT is good only below 18,000. The 1090 ES is good above and below 10,000 feet. So that kind of is a quick summary of what we've covered in the last two segments. Today, what we'd like to talk about is, what are some of the cost considerations as we, as GA pilots, decide to implement ADS-B. And so, Gary, do you have, now Gary being an avionics technician that's been dealing with this for quite a while, has some experience, considerable experience with installation. In your experience, is there a better way than some other way of installing? Is one system preferable to the other? What are your thoughts?
Very good question, and we've installed many different systems because there really isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for the GA fleet, and that really boils down to we go through a series of questions with our customers when we determine what's going to be the best, most economical, best bang for the buck situation for them. And it really boils down to whether or not they want to have ADS-B in, and usually it's almost been 100% yes with the ADS-B in. And then what their current equipage is, because that's going to help drive the type of equipment that they may need, and there's a real matrix there. Because with the ADS-B in, which I said, most people do want to have, you need to figure out how you're going to display it.
Right.
A lot of people already have the means with maybe a multifunction display in the aircraft or portable GPS that's compatible, or maybe they're using an iPad, and other people don't. So they need to determine, what it is they want to use for that.
So without getting too far afield here, it is possible then to receive ADS-B in information on a non-certified unit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And of course the in information is of quite a bit of interest to the pilot, actually. So I don't know if you can do this or not. I'm going to ask you some hard questions here.
Sure.
Number one, do you see any likelihood we're inside of 3 years now by the mandate. Do you see any likelihood that there will be any further price reductions in the equipment that is being offered to us?
So far, what we've seen is the prices pretty much have leveled off. What's causing that is the demand. The demand
Right.
is high for the systems, and the demand is going to continue to increase. Now, we have seen some systems lower in price, and what we're finding is that it's the less desirable systems there, are the ones that don't offer benefits per cost as some of the others. So the pricing is kind of leveled off. What we're finding as the price is leveled off is that maybe the price is going to stay the same, but maybe over time via software enhancements and things like that, other features get added.
Okay.
So we're finding the price about the same, but features going up.
Okay, that makes sense. That would parallel other computer developments, basically. Could you throw a ballpark figure out there? I'm going to ask you some numbers now, but let's say that you decide to do a 1090 ES as your choice for system installation, and you don't have a certified WAS GPS installed on your airplane. What would that type of box, can you ballpark it within a few $1,000s?
Sure, absolutely, because we've done a lot of those. And, and again, it's driven by if you want in, which most people do, and then what you're going to use for in. But a typical transponder swap out for 1090 ES that has the dual link in and the ability to maybe wire to an existing system or Bluetooth to an iPad or something, they range from about, with the whole install and everything, from about $5,000 up to $8,000 has been the average.
Okay, so 5,000 to 8,000, you say that included the install?
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's not as steep as I thought, but
sure. Yeah.
And so if you didn't get the in capability, but just wanted to satisfy the FAA mandate of 1090, or I'm sorry, of ADS-B out, then what are we looking at for total costs?
What you're looking at is quite simply, what we found the easiest way to do that right now is with the transponder that has a built-in WAS GPS, and that can be done for as little as, say, $4,000 to comply with the out mandate. Okay.
Well, Gary, thanks for joining us for these 3 segments on ADS-B. I mean, it's going to be more and more interesting, of course, as we approach our deadline. And this has been very informative, and I hope it helps our viewers make up their minds what they'd like to do. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Welcome back. Ice Edge here. Pretty extensive this season with it. The heavier ice just north of St. Paul. And it looks like the lighter stuff, or the thinner, less concentrated ice edge here about, I think it was 8 to 10 miles away from St. George Island. There's a chance some of that could get around closer into St. George, and even the heavier ice up here north of St. Paul may come in onto the north side. Otherwise, marine forecasts here for tomorrow, gales all along the coast, strongest down here to the south as that next system approaches. Otherwise, winds coming back up to 30 knots for Clarence Strait, 20 for Stevens Passage, and variable north winds 15, call it for Northern Canal. And then for Wednesday, storm warnings here out all along the outer coastline, coming down to 45 knots as that front weakens. Could even go lower than that in the late afternoon. Otherwise, gales for Clarence Strait, small crafts for the central inside waters, Frederick Sound, Stevens Passage, south 20 knots for Northern Canal. And for for Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, northeast 30 knots. Small craft advisories, gales north Gulf Coast, especially on the east side with small craft advisory winds here. Kodiak Island, again coming down from the storm warnings that are out tonight from Shelikof Strait eastward. Lighter winds tomorrow as that front weakens. And then for Wednesday, the gradient tightens, so we go back into the gale force winds from the Barrens eastward along the North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories, Prince William Sound, and for Cook Inlet on down, except for the gales there in Kachemak Bay. Bristol Bay, northeast 25, brisk wind advisories there, or actually with 5-foot seas now. It opened up quite a bit. Small craft advisories, gales here, the south side of the peninsula. For Wednesday, northwest 20, Bristol Bay, 30 knotters across the Alaska Peninsula. Freezing spray continues here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, 30 knot winds up to Sitkinak. Eastern Aleutians, 30 to 35 knot winds north-northwest, strongest across Unalaska Island, diminishing from Nikulski out to Adak, 20 knots, and then lighter for the western zones. Stays light out here west of Adak, westerlies 10 to 15. Only 20 knots now for Adak, and 30 knots, probably looking at gale force gusts, and that's about it, probably less than gales. And for the southwest coast, brisk wind advisories south of Nunivak Island, otherwise to the north. 20 knot winds back toward the Bering Strait, lighter St. Matthew Island. Small crafts for the Pribilofs. And Wednesday, no change, 25 knots out of the northwest there for St. Paul and St. George. Brisk wind advisories continue south of Nunivak Island, 20 knots elsewhere. For the Arctic coast, on the east side, that's where the strongest winds will be. Easterlies 30 knots, dropping back to 20, and then lighter here for the remainder of the coast. And for Wednesday, picking up to 20 knots, Wales to Cape Beaufort. And then we've got gale force easterlies from the central coast eastward to Demarcation Point. And for tonight again, even tonight up there, the gradient is strongest on the east side, and it'll stay that way for the next couple of days. Clouds, a few flurries up here to the north. Front moving northward, so again, storm warning, Shelikof Strait, Kodiak, up along the North Gulf Coast. Gales developing and increasing on the southeast coast with rain right along the coastline. And then that front pulls southward again as this cranks up, moves to the northeast. And again, gales to near storm force winds will come in with that, strongest over the southern panhandle. Snow out here in the west in the colder air, a mixture. Rain continues Kodiak and the North Gulf Coast. And for Wednesday, that front again brings storm force winds to the panhandle with rain, wind and rain back to the Kodiak Island area, and really not much change over the interior and even out over the Bering Sea, maybe a few more snow showers. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.